video submission for Powerful Spikes. In this video, we'll be covering each team member will talk briefly about the user stories they're working on or their main focus for the game, and then their personal goals for what they want to accomplish. And then we'll go and follow that up with what went right this week, what went wrong, and how we can improve moving forward. And then the video will close out with a brief discussion about what we learned from other apps via our comparative analysis. And with that, Kenny, I'll go and pass it over to you to go ahead and address what your primary focus what your primary focus is for the project, and then what your personal goal was to accomplish by the end of this week. Go ahead.
Alrighty, so my what I've been working on the project is generating a randomly or procedurally generated terrain, and to that effect, I have accomplished that goal. Um, and then my goal for this week was to implement a very bare bones spread algorithm, which is what is on screen right now, and I at least at a base level have accomplished my goal for this week.
All right. Over to you, Mike.
All right, so this for what I've been working on is kind of bringing myself up to be the multiplayer expert for the project. So there's been a lot of research in our networking solution package, which I've selected as Fishnet. Um, this package is relatively new in development, so there's been a lot of growing pains with that. And to smooth that over, I'm just trying to document what I find and how to implement that in the future. And then for this week, I want to take that knowledge and leverage it to create a direct networking solution within the game, so we can get two players in the game over an IP address. And in order to reach that goal, I've got the environment working on a local network, and I'm just missing some testing to confirm that this is actually effectively working, which should be handled by the end of the next 2 days.
Excellent. Thank you kindly. And then on my side of the fence, so my primary focus is really on the project coordination side of the fence, making sure that Trello is running and updated, our documentation's updated and clean. Once those primary functions are addressed, then I move over to my secondary role, which is addressing the more simple aspects of programming, as I'm by far the most inexperienced programmer of the group here. And so the groups helped organize my work by focusing on menus and things that are repeatable. And so I'll be focusing on splash screens, menus, both like the in-game player menu, some of the loading screens, as well as like the credits and splash screen information, stuff like that. What I plan on having complete by the end of this week is the template for how our primary menu is going to work. I've watched several tutorials on how to make that happen, and I feel pretty confident that I understand what they're saying there, and so I'll be able to assemble that by the end of the week. Okay, so that covers our primary issues that we're trying to take into account. Kenny, can you just briefly describe what's happening on the screen right now?
All right, so the two towers here and here are creating what we're calling creep right now, and at their location, and then using an algorithm based on the cells, they are spreading out from the central location of the towers.
Awesome. Thank you kindly. Okay, so Mike, over to you. What do you think went right this week?
For this week, what I think we're right is our division of labor was, I think, still spot on for playing Doris drinks, and generally making a surprising amount of progress on our respective goals. Getting the gameplay environment on Kenny's side, it looks great. The spread is coming along nicely. This is far beyond the expectations for the first week of development, and likewise getting the network solution sorted out and actually live and replicating within the first week was also beyond my expectations um, for the week, and is great. And our documentation seems to be all coming up in order. So I think just meeting our goals is top notch for what proving that things went right.
Awesome. Thank you kindly. Kenny, what do you think went right this week?
What I think went right, I feel like I was able to um, implement the spread at least at a base level, which was my goal for this week. So that is what I feel went right, at least for me. Um, and um, both Mike and Michael have made progress with their goals being managing the project and doing the fishnet multiplayer aspect.
Okay, awesome. And then on my side of the fence, what I think went right. A lot of it's really echoing the sentiments by Kenny and Mike here. But what I also think went right is that we aren't working or planning in the moment. We are working and planning with the future in mind. We, I think, are continuing to challenge ourselves to be realistic about our scope and scrutinize what we're doing to ensure that we'll be able to realize the vision for the game in the time allotted. Um, and I think that as Mike already mentioned, the division of labor has been very effective in allowing each of us to focus heavily on our specific areas, which is part of what I think has attributed to the tremendous amount of progress that we've made as a team and individually throughout the entire class period, but particularly this week alone. The enhancements and the changes that we've made have been phenomenal, phenomenal. All right, so back to you, Mike. What do you think went wrong this week?
Um, well, I can speak for what went wrong with me was going through and jumping right into the multiplayer education was a little premature for me when there are a lot of nuances that are just about working with Unity as on its own that were blockers for me. So understanding some basic functionality in Unity took me longer than I anticipated because a lot of my Unreal knowledge did not translate over well. That being said, if I had to do it again, I think it would have been wiser for me to build some basic things in Unity before trying to implement something as complex as the multiplayer networking.
Excellent. Kenny, what about you? What do you think went wrong this week?
Well, what I would say went wrong, at least for me again, I wasn't able to devote as much time to coding as I wanted to. And while I did end up hitting my goal, which was having spread implemented, I wanted to have it implemented earlier so I could produce, or so I could iterate on it and either try different methods of spread or to perfect the current method.
Okay, excellent. On my side of the fence, I think two main things went wrong. One on the personal side, and then one on the team side. On the personal side of the fence, I wasn't able to devote as much time as I wanted to my function in the earlier half of this week, particularly. We had a couple of goals in mind with regards to where our documentation would be and where we would be in like the comparative analysis, and we're not quite there yet. We do still have plenty of time to make this happen, but there was definitely some slippage there. And then as far as on the team side of the fence, I think where I should have acted sooner was directly engaging with the instructors, with Rebecca, to absolutely and unequivocally clarify exactly what the deliverables need to be. I've already done that. I've got the information that I need, but I could have done that sooner so that my efforts that I was able to focus on during the early part of the week would have been more effective as opposed to spinning my wheels on something that wasn't really in our scope or wasn't really necessary for the completion of our project or the accomplishment of our objectives by the end of this week. All right, so back to you, Mike. What do you think? How can you improve moving forward?
Um, I would think moving forward, I just need to maybe prototype out what I want to do ahead of time so I can break the knowledge down into bite-sized pieces so I can understand when there's basic functionality that I just don't understand how to do. And by through the prototyping, I can identify my weak points and work on boning up on my knowledge that way, without getting halfway through implementation and finding myself in a hole.
Excellent, excellent. Kenny, what about you? How do you think you can improve moving forward?
I feel like the best way for me to improve would just be to um, manage my time more appropriately, so that way I spend more than just um, a day and a half on working on the code
Mhm.
for the entire week.
Fair, fair. So on my side, how I think that I can improve moving forward, and we've already discussed this as a team, but moving into the next 2 months of the class, since we're going to be more heavily focused on production, what I anticipate is going to happen is that we're going to experience a bit more time dilation during the next 2 months than we would have normally, because of the time that was lost in this first month of class. Since, as I understand it, in the first 2 weeks we're supposed to have MVP roughly ready by then, and so then I'm sure there's other aspects that we cut off during this month that we'll need to make up in the future months. And so what I think that I can do to improve is one, um, get us more focused on scoring our individual Trello cards and the features and functions and such that we want to add, so that the positive momentum that we have on the project, we can maintain that, and it'll help us to continue to accomplish our goal of being very realistic about our scope, by using roughly empirical data instead of guesswork. And I also think, as far as improving moving forward, that there's definitely better ways for us to utilize our sync time. We've already started to put some of these mechanisms in practice now. Previously, we were syncing almost every day for roughly 2.5 to 3 hours of conversation and dialogue, which I wouldn't change that going back, because it definitely gave us a lot of time to both focus on the project and talk about our ideas, but also to get to know each other personally, which I think has helped us better gel as a team. And so, but now that we, have a very solid and very positive rapport, I think that we can start shedding more of that intense daily sync up time, so that we can instead focus more on our work cadence, the division of labor, as Mike has articulated and helped guide us on. And also, even though we're talking about what we can improve moving forward, I do want to go back to what went right. And so Mike has done a great job at taking a look at what our skill sets are, and proposing not only a solid division of labor for us to be effective in what we do, but also helping to organize our structure on how we organize our information within the coding environment, so that it's extensible, it's clean, and it's going to be easy to read and manipulate moving forward. That's also going to make it much easier for them, both Kenny and Mike, to support me. So when I'm doing my coding work, it'll be easier for them to kind of target what I'm looking at, and then do their spot checks and just sanity checks, and make sure that I'm screwing up anything obvious. So definitely kudos to both Kenny and Mike here. Kenny for making exceptional progress, and Mike for using his knowledge and experience to both educate us in Unity and the coding environment in the game, and also helping to organize us as far as our coding efforts and all that is concerned. All right. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Wrap up.
All right, cool beans. So that's the end of our video submission here. Please, supply any questions or comments or any feedback on how we can improve this, so that we can continue to incorporate that and iterate positively moving forward. And please let us know, based on what you're seeing here, if you think that we are making positive progress in the game, and whether or not we're ahead or behind the curve. If you think that what you're seeing here is behind the curve, I would definitely like you to raise that as soon as possible, so that I can help us plan accordingly, and we can get back ahead of the curve. One of the most important things to me, acting in a servant leadership role for the team, is that the team experiences as little stress as possible, because stress is a direct deterrent of positive progress and fun, which I think is one of the big focuses of what we're doing here. And with that, thank you for your time. That's Powerful Spikes, signing off. Greetings, my name is Michael Martin, and I am the project lead for Team Powerful Spikes at Full Sail University. This is the final component for our month 1 submission for our zone control game development project. This is our comparative analysis on the game Creeper World 4. Creeper World 4 is the largest and most popular game that shares the highest level of similarity with what we're doing, both in the defense of zones and also capturing of territory. One of the core differences is that Creep is the ally in Zone Control, our game. Creep is the enemy in Creeper World. Beyond that, let's go ahead and jump right in. On the positive side of the fence, players found that the game is very satisfying to build and expand your economy and your defenses while pushing and taking territory and gaining territory control from the creep. They also think that the game has incredible staying power because of the vibrant modding community and the level of interaction that the game has with the player base and customization options. They also enjoy the multiplayer and co-op modes in this game, primarily through the cooperative gameplay combat against Creep. On the negative side of the fence, there's a campaign and story function to Creeper World. They find that the story mode leaves a lot to be desired. From my perspective, I think that even though the game isn't necessarily narratively driven, lore and story can definitely play a big part in helping to improve the player's motivation and level of immersion with the game, the world, and your objectives. An example of that is Risk of Rain 2. Far from a narrative adventure, the lore that was added to the game, including the dialogue that occurs during cutscenes and with characters, helps to add a dimension of interest and intrigue and mystery to the world, which makes the player a little more encourages them a bit more to help explore and discover, to uncover more secrets about the world that they're adventuring in. One of the other negative aspects is the map design itself. In general, players felt the maps were okay, but part of the problem that they had was the design itself. It created scenarios where they would encounter surprise mechanics that could be devastating if the player didn't properly prepare for them. That part of that might be the lack of player experience with how the game works, but another part of it could be, again, how the maps themselves are designed and the amount of tutorial content that explains how the maps and the mechanics interact with each other. Also, they complain that the 3D assets don't look very rushed in some senses and look polished in others, which creates a level of inconsistency with the game, which damages immersion. Lastly, the menus and user interface leave something to be desired in Creeper World from the player's perspective. And so that's something that again also can make it difficult for players to get engaged with the game and find the same level of enjoyment that you wish. The ways that we can leverage this type of content to help improve our game is by including as much player-controlled customization as possible. Even though our timeline is limited, giving players the option to configure or customize maps would be amazing. But on a stretch goal side of the fence, if we could allow them to import some kind of visual asset which would allow players to change the way that the terrain manifests as far as its visual aspects are concerned, and the same with the theme for the player-controlled objects and the power manifestation of the different player abilities, that would also help to go a long way in helping to shake the game up and keep it fresh for players that have gone through several matches. Also, one of the other aspects would be manipulating the victory and loss conditions, and so players would be able to customize or create their own kind of alternative game modes beyond what we initially designed into the core of the game. The players also, again, enjoy the multiplayer aspect, and so fortunately for us, multiplayer is one of the core aspects of Zone Control. We want it to be a competitive player versus player environment, but one of the areas that we aren't really accounting for is a potential cooperative aspect to the player interaction. And so not sure if it's something that we would be able to scope in within the time that we have, but if we can include some kind of co-op mode where players can ally with each other against the AI, that would help to take zone control to the next level. Lastly, we would also want to ensure that we keep the UI as tight and unobtrusive as possible. That was one of the other key takeaways that I took from our comparative analysis. If we can strive to maintain solid consistency between the UI our in-game assets, and the manifestation of player abilities, that would really help us to polish the look and feel of the game overall. And with that, that concludes our comparative analysis on Creeper World against our game, Zone Control. Please supply any kind of thoughts and feedback that you have, and thank you again for your time.